It was a banger, guys. It was 0-0. It was Serie A heritage. Juve 0, Roma 0. Adam, why is this game so high up in the running order?
It is high because I think we both agree that Juventus are starting to cooking, as I alluded to last week. The style of football is definitely pleasing on the eye at the moment. Motta's got them turned around in terms of footballing philosophy, and they're creating really good football at the moment. On the other hand, we've got Roma, who desperately need to get a lot of points on the board, but they were very much counter-attacking, very much backs to the wall kind of stuff, really well marshaled by Mancini and Ndicka in the centre of defence, and not helped by the rest of the team, to be honest. However, good kind of performance from a backline point of view. And in the last 5 minutes of that game, when De Rossi had made substitutions about 5 minutes earlier, actually changed the complexity of the match, because it actually looked like that Roma were going to nick a win in Turin. So it was a fascinating game because it was very much end to end by the end of it. And yeah, I think there's a lot to kind of talk about, right, Rory? Because I think, shall we start off with Juventus and talk about how well they played? I think you made the comment in our group about how it's weird to kind of say that this is an exciting Juventus side, but they are genuinely really good in terms of attacking foil, in terms of the way they're going about it. However, it's that end products. And this is the point that I made a few weeks ago around Vlahovic. He needs to be more clinical. He needs to be kind of getting himself a bit more ruthless in the box. And on this occasion, we saw what I think we've seen for the last few seasons at Juventus, where it comes against the bigger sides and he struggles. That said, however, the likes of Yildiz, for example, who is supposed to be his number 10, didn't really cover himself in much glory because he couldn't finish his opportunities either. And I think this could be the issue that Juventus and Motta face, is that whilst they are really attractive on the eyes, they're not turning those kind of games where they dominate possessions, dominate the XG. They're not turning those into wins. And at some point, we'll see the Juventus fan base go absolutely apeshit because they're not getting results, right? And I'm there for it, Rory. I'm going to be sat here with my popcorn to watch this happen. But at the same time, you can already see this is what's going to happen with Juventus. So my question to you is, do you think this is just a one-off game, or do you think this is something that Motta should be concerned about?
I think, look, they've scored 6 goals this season so far. So they put 3 past Como and 3 past Verona. Now, as much as we love Verona, and as much as Como is a very romantic story, neither of those teams are going to be very high up the league, right? I think this is the first time they've faced a team that's going to be pushing, right? That's going to be in that European race. They saw the difference, and they saw that you're going to need that little bit extra. In the past, since I've been making this podcast, or since we've been making this podcast, every time I've watched Juventus, it's been out of duty, right? It's like, I need to watch Juve because it's Juve, and I'm just going to have to sit and watch this 90 minutes and just get through it, right? And in the last 3 games, I've been like, I actually didn't hate all of that, right? Some of that I actually enjoyed. So I think this is like the big improvement for Juve. With this particular game, Roma defended incredibly well. They came with a very, very clear game plan. And I think Motta hasn't really come up against teams that fully sat back against him, right? So when it was Bologna, when you go to Juve, when you go to Roma, when you go to Napoli, they're not sitting back and defending against Bologna. They're going, we need to win this game. It's Bologna, right? Whereas now he's turning up with Juve, and the big teams and the little teams, even though they've done well against Como and Verona, the teams around them are going to go, no, you know what, we'll just sit back a little bit and we'll make sure we're defensively solid before we go and do anything else. So I think it's something that Motta is going to have to figure out, how to coach that team to get past that mid-block, low block kind of thing. Like, how can he adapt his tactics and get the best out of his attackers to do that? Because I think it was a little bit easy at times for Roma. I don't think Juve pushed them as much as they could have done. Part of that also is with players like Yildiz and Savona. Like, these are young players, right? They've had very good starts, but with young players, you're going to have inconsistencies. They're not going to be amazing every week. That's part of the risk of playing young players. So I think that's part of it as well. I don't think it's alarming for Juve at this rate. Look, they've won 3-0, 3-0 and drawn 0-0. They've still not conceded a goal. Like, it's insane. It's a very good start to the season. I just think there was a little bit of a flashpoint, especially with Vlahovic, where you think, we know he's a player that relies quite heavily on confidence. And there was times in that game where you could see his temperament getting lost a little bit, and you could see him getting frustrated and getting like snatching at chances. And you just, if you're a Juve fan, you don't want that to continue too long, right? You want to make sure that the next game he gets a goal, because otherwise it's 2 games, 3 games, and we know that Vlahovic can go on these stretches. I don't think it was a horrendous performance from him. I think, as you said, Ndicka and Mancini are forming quite a nice little partnership there. They're both decent. As much as Mancini's a dickhead, he's a decent centre-back.
He's a good centre-back, I'd say, yeah.
So, like, it wouldn't be an easy day at the office anyway, but I think Motta just needs to see how he can change this team to get past those low blocks, mid block, because it's something he might not have faced before. But in terms of the entertainment, I honestly think Juve are just playing such attractive football, and it's something that can really, like, just change, just trying to pass nicely, and some nice,
it's exciting,
some nice little 1-2s, and some, like, the thing that really impressed me as well was the passes from deep, quick out wide for the wingers to get on, and just not the counter-attacking like Allegri, where it's just like 11 behind the ball and then sprint. It's like well-structured, fast, dynamic, exactly, like choreographed moves where you can see the structure, the triangles. And I just really, really enjoyed watching it. I was like, God damn, I'm actually enjoying Juventus. Damn it, Thiago, what are you doing to me? This was not supposed to happen. So I think it could be a really exciting season for Juve, honestly. And I think we've talked about, if you check out our Premier League episode, we were talking about Arne Slot coming in and doing such a good job at Liverpool instantly. I feel like Thiago Motta, he's getting his ideas across quickly to this team. Like, the turnaround is insane. If you sit and watch the last Allegri match now, go back and watch that, and then watch this game, you won't recognize the players. And it's basically the same squad. Like, McKennie's still there. Like, a lot of the players are still there.
They are, but I think that's mixed in with a lot of younger prospects in this team that are more receptacle to change. They're more open to ideas. And I think that was kind of definitely seen in the likes of Savona, as you mentioned previously. But, players like Chico Conceição, he was getting into those positions constantly, trying to work out opportunities. I did make an observation. I felt Cop Miners was trying almost too hard. But I think his mission was to try and lay it on a plate for the likes of Vlahovic, etc., to score that goal. And I felt almost, I don't know whether you feel the same way, but the balance of Cop Miners alongside his kind of midfield players like Fagioli, for example, were just getting a slightly bit in the way of each other, because they were kind of like, right, I need to pass it to someone, but actually I don't know who I'm supposed to pass it to, because the main man is being marked out with Mancini and Ndicka being incredible. So I think they are missing that kind of play. And I was personally surprised we didn't see Nicky Gonzalez, who was signed from Fiorentina. I think he's a player that can just turn it on a pace when needed. So yeah, surprised from that point of view, Rory. But if we twist this now to Roma, we've already identified in the early stages have struggled. And it didn't look like any of the players that they brought in this summer have pushed on again in this match. Sule in particular, for me, was disappointing. But Dovbyk really struggles against the likes of Gatti. I felt like he needs to start being a bit more demanding of centre-backs. And I know he's playing the kind of solitary man up top, but he needs to be really pushing the defenders and creating spaces, if it's not for himself, then for his other teammates as well. But I also feel like Pellegrini's lost in this system. I think he slows down the tempo of the game, and it was noticeable when both, and also all three of them, ironically, they all came off. And as soon as they came off, they seemed a lot more fluid. They seemed to be a lot more running. The likes of Dybala seemed to have a little bit of freedom. Zalewski, I thought, had an impressive cameo in this game. And they were unlucky. Angelino having a shot, almost creeped into Gregorio's goal as well. I mean, these are the kind of differences. And I suppose I posed this as a question because I posed it to one of the Roma fans that I noticed on Twitter and asked his opinion. And he is of the same opinion that I suppose Pellegrini is an enigma in some respects. They don't really know what he can do. And with Dovbyk, the kind of perception is that he will come good. However, he does need a goal. Agreed that he needs to get a goal as soon as possible. But the point I'm trying to make is I think you get to a point in the season where you've tried to get these players into the system. Is it time for De Rossi now to maybe make the changes and have the players that fit the system, or do you just change the formation?
I think a little bit more patience with Dovbyk is going to pay off. I think there's a lot of players, like if you look at like Selemakers has come in this season, right? Sula has come in this season. Dovbyk has come in this season. That's your three main attackers in this game around Pellegrini, right? That's three players who have to get used to playing with each other. They have to get used to playing in a new system. I think it's what we talked about the episode before. Dovbyk thrives on crosses. You have to get crosses into the box. But they don't have that natural width. I feel like Selemakers is a little bit of a wider player, so he'll be able to figure out a little bit quicker. I think the formation isn't the issue for Roma. I genuinely don't think it is. They just need to try and get a little bit more width and work to Dovbyk's strengths. Now, obviously, it's difficult to kind of dictate your whole attacking play when he hasn't scored yet, right? Sure. If he gets a goal, you're like, okay, yeah, no, this is it, right? This is like build all that around it. But that's how you get the best out of him. He's a big physical lad. He gets on the end of crosses. If you're playing smart balls into his feet, I don't know how well he's going to do with it, right? So I think they have to just persevere a little bit more with this and just try and hammer home with Saelemaekers, Sula, Zalewski, whoever it is they decide it's going to be, Dybala. You need to get out wide and get that ball across. I think this international break, even though a lot of the players will be going off with their respective teams, I think it will be a really useful time for De Rossi and his staff to sit down, look, see what's been going wrong and how they can work out this attack. And with the players that are remaining, maybe try and figure out, okay, iron out a few kinks. I think this is a good, like, as annoying as it is for the fans, the managers are actually probably quite happy with this international break of like, okay, we've got 3 games. We've got enough of like a test group to look back at and go, okay, what do we need to improve on? What do we need to like strengthen? So I think a little bit more patience, it will all be fine for Roma. I think with the optimist's hat, I think it's encouraging that you can bring players off the bench and it completely transform your performance, right? Like if you're looking, because Roma looked like they weren't really going to score in a month of Sundays, and then they made the substitutions, and I was like, you know that meme of the guy with the controller and then you just sit forward. I was like, oh my God, this could actually happen, right? Like all of a sudden you had the pace, you had Dybala, Baldanzi, Zalewski, Shomorodov, right? All of a sudden it was like they were just piling forward. Juve were just, you saw Gatti like panicking and trying to get everybody up. Like guys are going, concentrate. Di Gregorio was having to come out and claim crosses. Like it was just, it felt like Roma would, it was a matter of seconds.
Inevitable. Yeah.
And I think that's a really encouraging sign of that you've got the depth off the bench that even if, okay, it was 0-0, I think Roma would have taken that before the game. You're going to get a 0-0 at Juve? Yeah, cool. Deal. See you next year, right? Yeah. But I think having that strength in depth off the bench is a really encouraging sign for Roma, because I don't think every team has that. And there's a lot of players that like, we laugh about Shomorodov, right? He doesn't score often, but he is a player that brings something different, right? Yes. Zalewski, we talked about like the pace and his running. He's going to cause people problems. Like if you're a wing back who's been playing for 90 minutes and you see him coming on, you're going to, for fuck's sake, this is like, can you not just blow the constant, right? This is going to just get me out of here. Like, and I think like, I really think that's a positive sign for Roma. And the fact that, De Rossi has that ability to be like, okay, this isn't working. Now we can try it. So I think he waited a little bit long in this game, but I think he waited that long on purpose because he would have been happy with a draw. He was just like, for the last 5 minutes, okay, fuck it, let's just see if we can nick it. But I think having that option in your back pocket is going to be very useful, because that bench it's not a bad bench, I don't think. There's still like Paredes and there's some players on there that can still come on and make a difference. So I think, looking like a low-key, pretty strong squad. Yeah. But then for Juve, if you look at the players that came on, it's mental. You got Conceição, Koopmeiners. Gonzalez came on for 7 minutes, a little bit late. I think he could have done with coming on a bit earlier. McKennie and Douglas Luiz, like that is strong players coming off the bench there. So I think 2 very strong squads, but I think overall both of them were pretty happy with a draw at the end. Just take it, move on. Nothing lost, nothing gained. Yeah, and an interesting game. Tactically very interesting, even
Mm.
if there wasn't any goals. Sometimes you have to find the interesting thing, listener. Sometimes you have to really
Exactly.
look for the interesting thing. It makes it more worth it. It makes it more rewarding.